Okay, good evening and thanks for joining. Uh, Quite a turnout, I see. If anybody can just give me an indication if you can see the slides and you can hear me clearly.
Yes,
Yep, we can.
Perfect. No,
Yeah.
perfect,
yes, we
perfect.
can.
Thank you so much. Okay, so if more people are in the lobby, just admit them in. I've only got one screen in front of me, so bear with me, all right? So yeah, thanks for taking some time out to join the session. I'll actually explain how it came to be, but I'll get straight into it. So if you've attended some of the previous master classes I ran, the ones currently on YouTube, there's some overlap, so you might see some of the slides. There's also some new things in here. The real value really lies in the questions, right? So obviously I'll be presenting some thoughts for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes max, and then we open it up for some interactive Q&A, and I think that's where the value is. For those that's completely new, there's two previous master classes on YouTube. So I will share the slides, the links is in here, but effectively it's two hour plus sessions where I go through some of the same content, but towards the end there's different questions coming from the audience, and I think that's where the value is. So why this session, right? I get a fair amount, not hundreds, but I would say on a weekly basis I get two or three messages from people asking me questions. Many times it's more or less the same type of questions, right? So you might recognize some of this if you're on the call, but it's people, fundamentally asking the same thing. What can I do to stand out? I'm thinking of studying this. Is it worth it? And instead of me answering people individually, I think a lot of people out there might have the same questions. They might not have the courage to ask it. And I also don't have infinite amount of time to answer everyone. So I thought, once a quarter, once a month, depending on the need, do something like this, and hopefully a lot of people can benefit from it. If I could just ask everyone to be on mute. Like I said, about 20 minutes in, we'll open up for interactive conversation, right? So this is the backstory to it. I obviously will aspire to answer all these questions. Um, so about me, and you'll see there why I share this. If you've been to any of the conferences where I present, I actually never present an about me slide. I just don't do that. But because this is a slide about me sharing some insights and experiences, I think it's important because if you are going to take any of the advice I share, it needs to come from a place of experience. I need to have walked the path, and only then, I would qualify to give you advice. So a little bit about me. Speak at a number of conferences. I write for different publications. I think the one that I'm most proud of is the Isaka one, the Isaka Journal. Um, I write for them. And I'll explain why I do that as well in the course. I'm an authorized trainer for ISC2 and for EC Council. And then obviously I founded the Cape Town chapter. So a lot of you might be familiar with that as well. I have a lot of certifications. Um, can I just ask everyone to be on mute, please? I have a number of certifications, I think about 32, 33. And I've held a number of different roles at large corporates. So I've been around the block, and what I'm going to share with you is coming from a place of experience. It's not things that I heard, it's not things that I read, it's things that I've been through. And I've been on both sides of the hiring table. I've had many jobs in cyber. I've also interviewed many people for different organizations. So there might be something in there that might be useful to you. The first thing I want to share with you is, the phases of our journey. And I typically think of it like this because if you don't see the full picture, you could get despondent, right? In the first phase, not in the first phase, let's call it in the early phases, right? You could feel overwhelmed and lost. You could be attending the wrong events. You could be studying the wrong certifications, doing the wrong training. You could have a lot LinkedIn following, but they're all the wrong people. And I think it's important to acknowledge that this is kind of normal in the early days, right? You see, if you look at the arrows I've got there, it's high input and low perceived output. So you might feel like you're putting in a lot and you're not getting out a lot. But in hindsight, you actually are getting out quite a bit. You're getting experience. You're knocking your head a few times, and I think it's needed as well because, that's how we learn. That's how we develop. But as we go along, we get to a place where, kind of input equals output. Now, this is when you've been in the industry for 2 or 3 years. You kind of found your interest and your niche, and you kind of get out what you're putting in. But I think the place we all aspire to be is where the output far exceeds the input, right? It's when you do the right things at the right time. You do the one thing that really matters, and I think we want to aspire to get to that place rather quickly, right? And that's when you are operating strategically. You are studying the right stuff, you're doing it at the right time, you are zoning in an interest field, you're attending events that speak to your career objectives, you're publishing articles. But I can we just be on mute, please, if you don't mind? So effectively, wherever you find yourself in the space, right? Whether you feel like you're putting in 100 hours, you're getting nothing out, just acknowledge that you're in the early phases of your journey. If you find that you've been in that space for a few years, then possibly you need some mentorship. But trust the process. I think it's good to go through the process. Fast forwarding, to the end, it just doesn't work. You just don't come into the industry and start solving problems without having been through the process. Now, this is also important in cybersecurity, right? The industry, unlike the medical industry, the industry is not standardized. Now, when I say that, if you look at the medical industry, you take a doctor, right? To be a medical doctor in South Africa, you need to study at one of a few universities, X amount of years, you've got a body of knowledge, there's some legal requirements, and you can kind of safely assume that all qualified doctors adhere to a certain standard. No, that's not the case in cyber. If you take 10 CISOs or 10 security analysts and you look at their background, you will find that some of them have a degree, some doesn't. Some might have a CISSP, some may not. There's no consistent standard in how people progress through the cyber career. Now, that's both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because you could rapidly progress your career without having to spend years and years doing formal studies. It just depends on your path, your relationship, where you find yourself, how open-minded is the organization you work for. That would be the blessing side of it, right? For the individual. The curse side of it is, in the industry, what we have now is we have inconsistent professionals, right? So we have architects that's really, really good, and we have architects that just found themselves, flowing through the process, and they're now architect, but they really are not competent in what they do. So there's pros and cons to it, right? And why I say this is because right now in cybersecurity, we're still in a phase where there's no clear answer to a lot of questions. Do I need a degree? Some companies will insist that you must have it, and others will be fine if you don't have it. I looked at job adverts earlier, and it said there that you don't need a degree if you have a certification. Many companies will say it's mandatory, and some will say, it's to your advantage. Again, certifications is the same thing. You have companies that say, if you can do the job, we value the experience. We don't need a piece of paper. Other companies will insist that you must have it. So each company, and this is important, right? Each company has a right to define what it is they want. If a company says that they want a degree and they want a CISSP and they want the following for you to do the job, it is their prerogative, right? And I want to encourage you not to jump on the bandwagon of companies are unfair, the world is unfair. Just move along and find a company that's more to your liking. But organizations, if you start your own business one day, you have a right to define what it is employees need to adhere to that come and work for you. And I think that's how we need to look at it. The other thing that is also important is cybersecurity is only one department in a large organization, right? So if you work, for example, for City of Cape Town, it is not the CISO or the head of cyber's prerogative to say cyber professionals can come without degrees. The organization as a whole will have HR policies and standards, they will have job roles, and they will say any job grade at this level must have a degree, must have a master's, right? If the job grade meets that level in cybersecurity, that rule will apply. It is not always the prerogative of departmental managers to change the rules of the game. So it's important to note that while we might think that, cybersecurity is special, it's unique, cybersecurity often is just a department in a larger organization and they have to conform to the policies of the organization. Now, again, I will say that you get some very progressive CISOs, and they will table this with HR, they will educate HR, and they might actually get it right to amend the policies in their space to say, look, the space is moving really fast, we need to be flexible, we need to be agile, and some companies will do that, but that right now is the exception. It is not the norm for large corporations to adopt sub policies in each department and say, at this grade, because typically cybersecurity roles is also very highly graded because of the salary bands, right? So people will be coming into a cybersecurity architect or manager role at quite a high grade, and that automatically will impose some organizational requirements. So, closing point here, each company has a right to define what it is they want. We evaluate and say, is it reasonable? Is it for my appetite? And then we aspire to meet the requirements. Certifications, home labs, internships, they all improve our odds. And it's just about improving odds. That's why we do it. Now, the question I get asked most, right? And you can imagine, is what can I do to stand out? So I'm answering this purely from my perspective, and I mean when I open later Q&A, some other people on here can share their views as well. But to stand out, we naturally have to differentiate. So the question is, how do we do that specifically in a cyber context? All right. So if you think of hands-on experience, let's say you've got no experience, we now know there's lots of learning platforms, Subverted, Try, Hack Me, Hack the Box, right? Building home labs, doing some projects on the side, volunteering at NGOs, but getting some hands-on experience through any means necessary. Relevant certifications, another way to stand out, because if you think about standing out, right, what we're really saying is in a pool of people that's applying for a job, what will make me different? What will make me stand out from the crowd, right? So if everyone only has CC and you have CC, SSCP, and Security Plus, that will make you stand out. Now, I'm going to come back to the certifications because I want to share with you how we perceive that in the industry, right? Let me just answer it now, actually. When you have Security Plus and you do another certification down the line, you do CC, we're not particularly impressed by all the knowledge you've gained in doing all these things. What impresses the person on the other side is the consistency of you committing to it. The fact that you did CC now in January, 2 months later you did Security Plus, 3 months later you did something else. It is not the individual certification knowledges that you're gaining in the process that impresses somebody. It's the consistency of committing to the journey of continuously bettering yourself. So it's important that your CV, or let me say your educational or upskilling journey, tells a consistent story. I often see people that say, um, I'm committed to continuous development. And then when you look at the CV, they last did a course in 2018. So that's obviously not, a factual account of what they committed to. Networking and community involvement is another powerful means. And that's where we talk about chapter meetups, volunteering at conferences. And again, if you are based, I can only speak for Cape Town where I'm based now, right? If you're based in Cape Town, there's no shortage of opportunities. Just when I think about it now, ISC to Cape Town chapter, B-sides, DevSecCon, um, Hacking Hub. There's so many opportunities in Cape Town to get involved, and the barrier to entry is virtually free. You just raise your hand and say I want to get involved, and you're involved, and it gives you access to events, to conferences, and more importantly to people. All right. So if you've been on your journey alone, you haven't been connecting with the right people, then you really need to look into networking and community involvement. A wealth of opportunity there. And again, tying it back to your career, you're meeting people there, right? You're meeting hiring managers, you're meeting CISOs, you're meeting senior people, and that's the way that you effectively get hired. And I'll come back to that. And then soft skills. So Sometimes we get so fixated on the technicalities of the role that we forget that there's an ecosystem outside of cyber that we need to interact with, right? So communication is so important. I've worked with people that's really good at what they do, but they can't communicate, and that's kind of where it all falls flat. Imagine being a really, really good incident responder or a really good pen tester, and then you can't communicate your findings to the business. Um, for me, if you have the inability to communicate well, I think it's career limiting. So as you're building out your plans to upskill, make sure that softer skills is a core part of it. It's very easy to just get, I want to say, to get swallowed on the technical certs and security plus and SSCP and this after the other, but build in some other types of training as well. Problem solving, the five whys, all those techniques. It's very powerful. And then this is also important, and I'll explain what I mean here. Be clear on your career goals, right? And actually, I should say be consistent. I often find that people are all over the place. So then they're into forensics, then they're into GRC. And the only thing that you're communicating is that you don't really know where you want to be. And as a result, you are also studying things all over the place, like a shotgun approach. What we need to do is we need to define, where do you want to be, build out a plan to get there, and then execute against the plan. Now, what is important is the plan, the execution of the plan is never glamorous. It's one boring day sitting alone studying for 2 hours when nobody sees, right? You only get in 3 months to post on LinkedIn. I finally got the certification, or I finally have a publication. But the actual process of getting there's nothing glamorous about it, right? Now, what sometimes happen is we see somebody just completed the cert, and we look into it, and tomorrow we start studying for it because it sounds cool, but it doesn't have any relevance to what it is we're trying to do. On the other side, the person who did it, they could have a clear plan and building up to something. So I've been tempted with these things as well. Like, for example, ISACA might release a new certification, security operations analyst, or certified security operations analyst. And now you think, oh, it's from ISACA, it sounds cool, I might as well do it. But does it align to what I'm trying to achieve? And if it doesn't, it doesn't. We don't have to do everything. No, what is most important, all of these things we can do when we feel like it, but where it falls flat is if we are not consistent. So if you do these things consistently, I think that's where the magic happens, right? And I know there's people on the school probably who's they'll come in very, energized, very aggressive, and they will tackle a few of these things and then disappear for 6 months to a year without any progress. And then it doesn't matter. You have to keep the momentum going. So I want to talk about setting goals as well. Reason is it's the beginning of the year. I think a lot of people do this now, and just this is the way I do it. So I thought I'd share it, and there might be something in there for you, there might not, but I'm gonna just share it with you, right? So most people would be familiar with setting smart goals. Just a formula to make sure that what we set out to do is actually doable. All right. So again, something specific, we can get there by a certain date that's realistic and it's time bound to it. So this is mine for the year. I'm sharing it with you, the actual one. So I'm planning to write the CSSLP certification, very, very specific, by the 27th of March, right? So it's time bound. For me, it's attainable. For me, it's realistic, right? So this is the way that you set something out. Now, if you start saying, you want to do 4 certifications for the year, but you did zero last year, then chances are, it's probably not going to be attainable. So you obviously need to really reflect, because you don't want to set goals that's impossible to get to, right? And I'll break it down a little bit. Another one for me is submit a journal article by 21 January, right? So it's quite specific. It's not, submit a random paper to a random publication when I feel like it. There's a date to it. So as a result, I'll work backwards from there. So I just want to take one of this and dissect it with you so that you see the thought pattern behind it. And then when you build your own out, you can interrogate it like this. And I think if you're going to go down a path where you're going to spend time and you're going to spend money, you probably want to spend a little bit of time just making sure it's worth doing, right? So for me, I said, I want to write this exam. So I evaluated. I've got 30 plus. Is it worth it doing this for me? Does it serve my overall objectives, right? So my objectives from my perspective, it fits into the plan. Will I get a return on investment? You're going to spend some time and money here. Will it serve a purpose for me? And then what does it require of me to get to that goal, right? So we must always factor in the time as well. So it's one thing to say you're going to be spending 9,000 rand on something. It's another thing to say I'm spending 50 hours on something. So we have to factor in the time cost and financial cost, right? Can I afford to do this? Do I have the time available to do it? Is there an employee that can potentially sponsor this for me, or sponsor part of it for me? And if you come to the conclusion that in your context it's worth it, right? Then you map it down as a goal for the year and you stick to it. You don't now tomorrow decide I'm going to do something else because you saw a LinkedIn post. This is important. I covered it earlier. I just want to say this again, right? Don't, once your plan has been defined for the year, get distracted by things on LinkedIn. It happens a lot because everybody in your circle is busy with things, and now you see something and you look into it and you say, it's going to take me 6 hours. It's 6 hours then away from the main plan. Now I want to talk about certification. So I covered this previously in the other masterclass, but importantly, if we have new people here, um, important now, I suppose, more than ever, because there's so many learning platforms and institutions giving certificates, just so that we still clear on what is what, right? Industry certifications have a short lifespan in a sense that it's normally valid for 2 to 3 years. You need to be continuously, submitting proof that you're keeping active in the industry, and you generally need to pay an annual maintenance fee to keep it active. That's how you know it's a certification, right? The reputable bodies where you can get that: ISC2, EC Council, ISACA, Security Alliance. There's a lot of them, but the characteristic that makes it obvious that you hold a certification is the fact that you need to be submitting proof that you're studying. Going to conferences, you need to pay an annual fee. A certificate, normally once off, it's static. So you do a course, you get a certificate, and there's no need to do anything further. It's normally good for life, right? So you can already imagine that certifications hold more value because it requires you to maintain it and keep it active. Then we get certificate of completion. So if you think of Udemy, or similar platforms, plural site, you do a course, you watch some videos for 10, 12 hours, you get a certificate that says you spent 9 hours completing this course. Certificate of completion. Now, you could do on Udemy Security Plus, you get your certificate of completion, not to be confused with a certification. Certification involves an official exam. Sometimes it's remotely proctored, so somebody will watch you to the camera, and other times you go to a testing center to write it. And then we obviously get learning platforms as well, and I thought I'd mention that. So TryHackMe, Hack the Box, Subverted, again, certificate of completion. It just says that you've completed some training. um, Obviously, the weight of it doesn't compare to an actual certification, all right? But what it does communicate is commitment. So this is how we'll view it in the industry. If you come for an interview and you've done lots of triacmes, lots of Udemy's, right? Context is very important. So you say, I'm aware that you're looking for certifications, but in my context, I'm still starting out. I can't afford those expensive things. What I have done is I've done some triacmes, I've done some Udemy's, and what you're then communicating to someone is that you are creative, you're using resources at your disposal, and you're not making excuses. So it's very powerful if you tell the right story. All right. So if you're not by means to do like proper expensive certifications, then you consistently keep yourself busy with whatever you can get your hands on, and make sure that when you have the opportunity, you tell the story so that people can see that you are consistently doing what you can with what you have. All right. The other important thing with certifications to understand is, you get vendor agnostic certifications and you get vendor specific certifications. So it depends on where you want to go to with your career. Let's say you want to be an architect, like a solutions architect. You probably need to be dabbling a little bit more on the vendor agnostic certifications. Um, it's always good to mix it up. Let me actually rephrase this. I'm going to explain both, and I'll tell you the approach to probably consider taking, right? Vendor agnostic is more focused on principles. It doesn't focus on any specific vendor or technology. So if you do CISSP, it will cover firewalls in great detail, different types of firewalls, best practices firewalls, but it wouldn't show you an export of a Cisco firewall. Now, if you want to be a Cisco firewall expert, there's a whole series of courses you can go down to become a Cisco firewall expert. As you can imagine, that will limit you to working for companies where they have Cisco firewalls. And as you can also imagine, when the Cisco firewalls update next year to a new version, you have to go and recertify on the new version. So vendor specific certifications have a shorter lifespan because they are always tied to a technology platform. And as the platform evolves, you need to be recertifying and doing some additional courses to keep current. On the agnostic side, it has a bit of a longer lifespan, right? The principles is more or less the same. The CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, availability, is not really going to change much between now and next year. So they still require you to keep active in the industry, but the pace is a bit slower, all right? It is normally good practice to mix it up. So you look at some good industry respected certifications such as Security Plus or CISSP, and then you say, if we look at the technology landscape, what is your goals? Do you want to be an architect in a Microsoft space, perhaps? Then you look at some Microsoft courses, AWS, Google, whatever it is you want to be, or whatever the organization or the market is demanding. You make a call and you say, that's where you're going. I'll share my personal view. I've done some Microsoft stuff. That's the only vendor specific things I did because most organizations have a Microsoft footprint and it made sense for me. So I did 2 or 3 Microsoft courses. Everything else is vendor agnostic. There's no right or wrong. I want to say this as well. I know people that's Fortinet experts, Cisco, firewall experts, and if that's your passion, your inclination, then it makes sense for you to go down that path, right? But even those people would then complement it with something like a CEH or Security Plus, just to cover the basics from a security perspective as well. Degrees. This question comes up quite a bit as well. Is it still worth doing it? Just today, there's jobs you can still find on LinkedIn now if you go search for them. Are still all active, right? So Sanlam, you can see there line 2, bachelor's degree, um, certifications. If you go SRM, SOC provider, running from Cape Town, bachelor's degree. So, you know, people can have any view they have, right? But at the end of the day, if we're trying to get hired, we have to look at what the market is asking for, right? So the market is very much still asking for qualifications. Bachelor's degree, it's there you see it. Sanlam is asking for it, SRM is asking for it. And again, you will find companies that's not asking for it. So what I'll say is, and I'm very mindful here that circumstances don't always allow people to pursue a degree. All right. So that's a real thing, and I don't want to discredit that. But what I will say is, if your circumstances allow, consider embarking on this journey in a part-time basis if you must, as soon as you are able to. And as long as if it takes you 3, 4, 5 years, I'd say just start embarking on the journey. It will only serve you down the line. Because if we go back to the recruitment process, right? Let's say you apply for the BISA role at Sanlam. Let's say 100 people apply for that role. What they will do is they will look at out of the 100 who meets the minimum requirements, who has grade 12, who has a bachelor's. And if you don't have the bachelor's, you are out in the first iteration of shortlisting. Not because you can't do the job, not because of any other reason, simply because you don't meet the minimum requirements defined by the organization. So the CV, and I think Charles from B-Sides, he said it best. You got about 40 seconds with the CV to make your impression, right? And the only thing you want to do with the CV is you don't want to get disqualified. We're just trying to make sure that the CV is in a space where it gets you a conversation at the table. Once you're at the table, you can tell your story and you can sell yourself. But it won't help you if you get disqualified before you even get an interview. All right. So from a degree perspective, my view is go and search for your ideal jobs that you aspire to get, and look at what the qualification requirements are. And if you see that it's all asking consistently for a bachelor's degree, then probably put this on your 5-year plan as soon as your circumstances allow you to get it right. Um, I also want to speak about credibility. I found this to be, worth a lot in the industry, worth gold in my view, right? And again, some of the methods that has served me well, um, is obviously, if you are employed, making sure that you execute your current job the way you need to. Publishing papers, and I want to touch on that because if you are in a space, and I'm not too sure where people are that's underscore in their journey, but if you're in a space where you are looking to really elevate your personal profile, right? The thing that has been most powerful for me has been writing for Isaka, and I'll explain why that is the case. Because it's a journal, it's peer reviewed by at least 7 people, often from other countries. So when you publish in there, it's a back and forth. To get one article in will take anything between 4 and 7 months of submitting and back and forth and questions, and it really forces you to do some proper research, apply some of your mind to things, and contribute to the industry, right? So for me, there has been, it's opened a number of doors that you can ask me privately if you want to get into the detail of that, but it's been quite beneficial for me to do that. Speaking at events has served me well. Again, it's not everyone's forte, but um you can be however good you are at things, but if people don't know that you exist, it makes it very difficult. And again, I'll share some of my personal stories, right? A lot of work opportunities just come my way, just based on industry, exposure and engagement. And again, it's not necessarily to say that I'm better than most people at what I do. I'm maybe just a little bit more visible than a lot of people. So if you are really good at what you do, but things are not panning out, maybe ask yourself, am I visible to the right people? You go to events, are you sitting in a corner one side, or are you actually, walking up to somebody, introducing yourself, sharing some insights? And there's techniques to do this, right? And maybe I will share one with you. If you are, walking up to a leader, a CISO, a head of cyber, you just pass your security plus, and you want to just politely brag about it. What you can do is you can just say, you've just completed, the following studies, and you just want to ask some advice, what would they recommend you do next? That's a good way of asking a question and also telling them something at the same time. Um, I know it can be a bit daunting, but what I will say is most of the people in the industry, specifically, again, I speak in the Cape Town circle, people are very approachable. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're really scared to speak to people, I'll put you at ease to say 9 times out of 10, people's going to respond very kindly to you if you just take the leap and engage with them. Um, just to close up on the certifications, some of the entry level ones, and I think the most popular ones now, right? Certified in cyber. I think there's still some free vouchers left. So if you don't have it, certainly look into it. They gave away 1 million free vouchers, and I think there's still some left. So certified in cyber, you actually have no excuse not to get that because the material and the exam is free. Security Plus, I think will set you back about 4,000 Rand. Probably the most popular entry level to mid level certification. So an absolute must if you are starting out the journey or you are thinking of switching into security. That is an absolute must that you have to consider. SSCP is a little bit more on the elite side, same level as Security Plus, but not as widely recognized, so not as popular. You won't find a lot of jobs asking for it, but it's actually a bit wider and deeper in content than Security Plus, right? So I normally advise people to do both. Um, Study for one and go write them both. They're very similar, but Security Plus will serve you better. If you have neither, Security Plus will give you the most return on your investment, all right? CISP, obviously, it's the one thing that I think everybody must aspire to. It's a door opener. It's very widely respected. A lot of senior roles ask for it. Whether it's worth it or not is a different debate. But again, if you are serious about building a cyber career, then the CISSP has to be on your list. All right, you need 5 years experience to get it, but you can go write the exam anytime. If you don't have the experience, you can still get what they call the associate, and then in 5 years, when you meet the experience requirement, you actually get the full certification. some cybersecurity roles. And the reason I share this is again to show you that in security now, I think I saw a post the other day where there was like 52 different job titles in security, right? The problem is the job titles mean different things at different companies. I know pen testing firms that call security analysts or that call pen testers security analysts. And then I know corporates that call a jack of all trades security analysts. So don't get too carried away with job titles. I think focus on what it is you want to do. A lot of companies also call the SOC analysts just security analysts, right? And then you actually get some companies will call them level one, level two, level three. So I think define what it is you want to do and make sure that when you are looking at titles, you look at the responsibilities as well. In this industry now, it's quite a mismatch with what you do and what your title is called, right? Security engineer is also widely used term, meaning everything from a cloud engineer to a firewall engineer. Again, just be clear on what it is you want to do. Make sure you understand the role, and do not make any assumptions when applying for specific jobs. Right? Um, Again, my experience, being a jack of all trades early in the career works well. It allows you to get your hands dirty in a lot of things. But as you progress, you probably want to specialize in one or two things and become really good at something. Yeah, I think you need to try and find your niche as early as possible, whether it's GRC, whether it's SOC, whether it's incident response, but find that space. And the reason why it's important also is as you're progressing through your career, as you're studying things, if you know your domain, it makes it easy for you to then focus on things in that domain and then you become very strong. Imagine now, and I'm saying this, but I'm a little bit guilty of it. But imagine now you're studying an auditing certification, and then tomorrow you're studying a hacking certification, and then it could appear that you're all over the place. All right. So it's again about being clear on your objectives and your goal and making sure everything you do is aligned. Soft skills. I think I touched on this earlier, but again, I find that the people that progress, through the cyber ranks, are the ones that is actually strong on the soft side, right? So the technical ability, you must be able to do the job. It's a given. If you are a SOC analyst, you must be able to read logs, investigate, work a SIM, work a EDR. That is a given, and everybody in the SOC can do those things, right? But everyone in the SOC cannot write a report that is understandable by a business user. And that is what differentiates us. Because if you think about, working in a SOC, you maybe have a SOC team lead or a SOC manager, head of cyber, CISO, and then you've got business users. And when you have an incident, you will find that SOC analysts are not invited to the top tier feedback sessions because they're not able to communicate. So they talk in logs and timestamps and things, and what we should be focusing on is understanding business impact, right? So again, maybe the job is of a nature where all you have to do is do the technical analysis and pass it on. But if you want to elevate your career, if you want to differentiate, you need to understand that on the other side of an incident is a business. And if you can then look at things and translate it back to business disruption, regulatory penalties, how does it impact the business? How does it save the business money? How does it cost the business money? Once you start thinking about cyber like that, then you're automatically moving into leadership space. Then you're moving from a technical analyst into cyber leadership, right? Any leadership position, cyber is no different. It's really about understanding the business and supporting the business. Attention to detail is quite key. I know we probably have a lot of SOC analysts on here, but if you think of things like time zones, you look at logs, mapping out logs, right? Making sure that you're looking at your logs and all the time zones are the same. Otherwise, things won't be in the same chronological order. And then having a problem solving mindset. I think that's also important. You get people, they just look at the incident at hand and they will do the bare minimum and they move along, right? But it's the person that asks, how did this happen? Why did it happen? Can we pick it up sooner? Can we automate this? It's that type of people that separate from the pack quite quickly. Um, Again, I share this for those who don't know, but I really started writing after I met Philemon Zongo in 2022. So if you don't know him, I'd say follow him. He shares quite a number of good insights. He runs the Cyber Institute in Australia. They do some good training and they give away 5 African scholarships a year. And those things are valued at $2,700. So it's quite expensive and it's some good training. So absolutely look into it if you're not familiar with it. And throw your name in that. I know some people actually that actually got the scholarship this year. So it really is worth looking into it. The other thing I want to touch on is personal branding, right? And maybe we've covered this already, but everyone has a personal brand. I sometimes meet people and they say, no, I'm not into the personal branding thing and it's not my cup of tea and I just focus on my thing. The reality is everyone has a personal brand. It's the only thing is some people are intentional about the message they project and others just let it be. All right. And the question you must ask yourself is, and maybe you ask yourself and then you must ask some people close to you that you trust enough to be honest, is when people think of you, what do they think? All right, because I can tell you, I know people, and when I think of them, I think they don't know where they want to be. They're all over the place. They're inconsistent. That's what they're projecting out, right? And then when I think of other people, I think, dedicated, driven, consistent, always trying to be better. So it's just what message are you projecting? And is it aligned to what you want to project? Because if you wanting the world to see you as, ambitious and reliable and dependable, and you're projecting the opposite, you probably want to make some changes so that people can see you for what it is you want to be seen, right? So just be mindful that we all have a personal brand, whether we are posting on LinkedIn or not. It's not about that. That is just a tool in the process. But we all have a brand, right? The question is, are we in control of it? When people think of you, what do they think about, right? When you think of these Louis Vuitton brands and Mercedes-Benz, what we think about, exclusivity, quality. And when people think about you, what comes to mind? That's the question. And if you know what comes to mind, then good. If you don't, then maybe it's time you just do a little bit of research around that. Networking and why it matters. Again, we spoke about communities earlier, and I want to just explain to you why, in case it's not very, very clear. But when we talk about networking, what we mean is, meeting people in the industry that we can potentially assist. And obviously, if we're networking with intent, then we're looking for people that can potentially assist us. It is important that we also try and give value because imagine everybody just come with the intention of gaining value, right? But to really understand the power of it, if you look at the typical life cycle of applying for a job, you see an ad online, you apply online to a job portal, and there's some kind of screening happening, right? Now, step one, two, and three is normally automated. If your CV doesn't play well with the application tracking system, you're out. If you don't meet all the requirements, you're out. This is before a human even looked at your CV. When you network and you know the hiring managers, what you have is you have the guarantee that a human knows you're interested and that they will get your CV in front of some human eyes, right? At the very least, that's a guarantee because you can ask the person to say, look, I have a look, I'm interested. And if you have a good relationship, they will meet you halfway. All right. Depending on how strong the relationship is, how well people know you, typically people will come to you and say, we've got a role, we think you'd be perfect. Look into this. But if you look at step one, two, and three, the power of networking, removes the risk. And you might hear sometimes people say, I've applied for 200 jobs and I got no replies. I'm almost willing to make a claim and say it's probably some technicalities and automations that's resulting in the CVs not passing through these filters because that's a whole different conversation that I'm not going into. But there's these application tracking portals and the way that they look at CVs and high-res images, and it's just a whole story about making sure your CV doesn't get rejected in there, right? So do look into application tracking systems and compatibility issues. What I've read is they're looking for a plain word-based CV with clear headings that's easy to process and no fancy graphics and no PDF formats or anything like that. Um, if you are in the job market, some tips that I want to share with you here is obviously, again, leverage the network, speak to the people you know, make sure you find yourself at these community events. I want to just mention three communities that I think comes to mind for me now, right? Obviously, ISA2 Cape Town chapter, that's the one that I run with some other people. We've got free membership as well. If you can't afford the standard one, just reach out to us. Um, the other one is DevSecCon. So Kelly and runs that with someone. They have a couple of meetups in Cape Town, and that's completely free as well. And then the Hacking Up run by Sia is also a very good a private membership if you are into hands-on training. There's some good things happening there, so definitely connect and follow them as well. You must tailor your CV based on the role, right? So I'm not saying tailor your CV based on every job ad, but if you are applying for a SOC analyst role, your CV needs to speak to SOC roles. It needs to speak to incident response, log reviews, and it has to create the impression that you you have skills that apply to a SOC. If you're applying for a GRC role, the CV will read a bit different. You will highlight your strengths around stakeholder engagement, risk assessments. So it is important. Again, obviously, if your goal is clear, you will only have one direction, and your CV will be tailored. But if you're applying to a number of different roles, just make sure that your CV is tailored because a SOC CV is not going to land well for a GRC role. It's different things, and you want to be highlighting different skills and attributes in that process. And then again, demonstrate practical skills. I know triathlon is quite big here in our area. There's a new platform now that came out as well, Subverted. Look into that. And there's a lot of others on the market, but the takeaway is that even if you're not employed, I think there's enough platforms now where you can practice and demonstrate your practical skill. 5, 10 years ago, we didn't have this. Now there's a number of these platforms where you can actually play with the sim, analyze logs, and they all have some free tiers available. And then obviously after that, you need to pay a little bit of a contribution as well. But again, if that's something you want to explore, I'd say reach out to maybe Sia or Katlego. They're quite big in that space. Communities, I actually maintain a list on my website and on the chapter website. So with links to everything, but there's a lot. The take, and this is just I want to say it's Cape Town centric. So it means that it's primarily Cape Town. As you can see, there's a lot of communities and forums and things happening. I know Via itself and Bosch started something now as well there for developers and secure coding, but there's no shortage of communities where you can engage, meet people. If you are finding yourself isolated and without a community, there's a place for you somewhere, right? So again, on my website, you'll find links to all of these sites. And even if you go to isac2capetownchapter.com/communities, there's a list there as well. And then as I close off, let me open up for some questions. I want to maybe just, touch on these points. Recognize the opportunities at your disposal, even if it's not obvious, right? So if you find yourself at B sites, I was at B-Sides last year, and there's a lot of CISOs there, and CISOs effectively hiring managers, right? That's an opportunity at your disposal. It's an opportunity to have a conversation with the leader and ask a question to say, when you're hiring someone, what do you look for in them? So sometimes it's not obvious, but recognize whatever opportunities are at your disposal, right? Be mindful about your personal brand. Um, be intentional. You have it. The only question is, are you taking charge of it or not? Invest in yourself as much as possible. And again, uh, this doesn't imply I'm disconnected from the world in a sense that not everyone can afford monetary investments in whatever way possible, right? If there's opportunities to volunteer, if there's learnerships, internships, time, invest in yourself to the extent possible in 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 your context. And then if there's one soft skill that you prioritize, let it be communication. Let it be communicating complicated things in an easy way for people to understand. And the reason why that's important is because you're always going to be in a technical environment where everyone can do the job, right? And the thing that's going to make you stand out is the ability to write a report that's so clear that people can understand it without having to come back and forth ask you questions. And then you see the four ladders, right? So I always visualize it like this: to, I want to say, not to master the corporate game, but to do reasonably well in corporate. I think if you tick these four boxes, no one can kind of deny you in that sense, right? So it's a qualification box: your bachelor's, your degree, your experience, your skill, your ability to do the work, your certifications, and your ability to communicate. I think if you tick all four boxes, you should be more than fine, right? The challenge comes in when you have a lot of qualifications, but you can't do the work, right? Or you have a lot of experience and skills, but you can't communicate. So you will see it, a lot of anyone without some of the others just can't serve you, right? So try and balance this in moderation, and then you should be good to go. And that's the loss from my side. So what I'll do now is I will stop sharing, and then we open up for some questions, and I hope there was some value in there for some of you. Okay, so stop sharing. Clive, you can come off mute, Clive. Okay, I don't know if I'm still audible, but Clive's hand is up. Anyone else? If you have a question, you can just raise your hand or just come off mute and we can discuss.
Mr. Grant and everyone, how are you?
Very well yourself.
Fine, thank you, sir. And sorry, I apologize. Actually, I joined the session a bit late. My network is a bit something this side. So actually, I have a question here, which goes like, what are the common misconceptions newcomers have about breaking into cybersecurity?
Sorry, could you repeat for me? I didn't get that full question.
Yeah, so the question is, what are the common misconceptions newcomers have about breaking into cybersecurity? I don't know if I'm audible enough for.
No, I got that. Thank you.
Oh,
The common
okay.
misconceptions, I think the biggest one is high salaries, right? So you get people that they just of the view that there's a lot of money to be made. And I think while that is true when you can add the value, right? It's not true if you're just walking in the industry. The it's quite interesting now where you'll find a lot of stats saying there's a shortage of skills, all right? At the same time, you will find a lot of people saying they're battling to break into cyber. And the reason they're battling to break into cyber is because on the hiring side, people are still expecting competent, quality candidates. All right. So the biggest misconception is that it's a way to make some big money fast, and that's not true. Okay. Before I go to you, Joseph, um, so I just want to look at the comments typed in here. So Roxanne saying degrees are very expensive for us with kids. 100%. So absolutely. And that's why I put a disclaimer there to say I understand the financial complexities. But I'm speaking purely from a place of what the market wants, right? So my view there is that as when you are able to, whether it is you funding it yourself, whether it is your employer helping you, but if you are in a position where you can start that journey, I would encourage you to do that. All right. But I'm mindful that it's not possible for everyone. Neil, how does IT audit feed into cyber? I'm not myself in the industry, but I've seen IT auditors make the transition. 100%. So yeah, you see with auditing, it's interesting because a lot of auditors, um, did I actually know a lot of auditors who started as financial auditors, and then as companies now shifted towards IT audit, they kind of just naturally pivoted into IT auditors, right? And what I then found was IT auditors would come into the cyberspace and they would audit cyber processes and policies and technologies that they've never worked on. all right, and it never goes down well in that case. So yeah, I think, and I speak from my experience at Engine, right? We actually hired somebody from IT audit in cybersecurity purely because we worked with them a lot. They were auditing us. They had some understanding of what they wanted to do. They had a lot of interest in it. And from a relationship perspective, we hired a gentleman over. His name was Matthias, and he did really well in cybersecurity, right? So I think it can happen. It can happen. I normally say if you can help it, right? It would serve you better to go into cybersecurity first and then go into audit. Because if you think about it, when you're auditing someone, you're coming in to say, are you doing it right? Are you doing it according to best practice? And you can only do that when you understand it, when you've done it before, when you know the shortcuts, what to look for, right? So if you can help it, absolutely try and rather come to cyber and then go to audit. If you're already in audit, you can absolutely make the shift because audit is about risk management, right? So you just need to find out how you're going to pivot. And I think the safest way into cybersecurity would be into GRC. So from an auditing perspective, 100% of your role is risk management. And if you go into GRC, it should be an easy switch over for you. I'm going to take the last question here, then I'll go back to the hands. This is from Prajnen. So, the biggest cybersecurity mistake you see organizations still make today. Um, and what's the fastest high impact, low cost fix? Yeah, I think if I think of mistakes companies make, right? I think it's how the cyber budget is split, to be honest with you. If you look at the stats and the readings and the research, we see that a lot of the breaches are still coming from the human side of things, right? We see that people still make mistakes, people are not trained properly. But if you look at the budget, you often see that security awareness only makes 2% of the cyber budget. So you have a situation where 80% of the problems come from one area, but I'm only spending 2% of the money to fix it. So I think the disconnect between where we spend and what the actual problems are is one issue. And I think the other issue is a lot of companies neglect security architecture. So you'll find a lot of companies operating with no security architects, and all you're doing there is you're introducing weaknesses. You bringing systems in, you're developing new systems, you're acquiring systems, and you don't have a proper architect that can vet these things and make sure it's coming in securely. All right. Um, go back to the hand. So Joseph, I see your hand is up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hughes. So, yeah, I just wanted to ask, right? So, the common perception is that when you're trying to break into cybersecurity, let's say you have experience in something that has nothing to do with technology. For instance, in my situation, I'm a legal professional, right? So, the common perception is that it's easy to get into cybersecurity through the GRC route, right? But then again, as I was going through the material, the studying, and everything, I've noticed that it's quite it's more of a strategic role, right? The GRC more than on an operational level, and to make I don't know whether to say to make matters worse, right? You need a deeper understanding of the controls of the risks that are found within the cyber within GRC. Sorry, so I just wanted to check on that perception. Like, is it? Would you say GR when you're transitioning from one profession to another? Is it wise to just jump in through GRC, or it's very important that maybe you start with the basics like in other roles?
Yeah, you see, when you pivoting into cyber from another career, right? You obviously wanna take the path of least resistance. So if you are an attorney, most roles, I think risk management is a part of almost every role, right? So if you think about it, if you're an attorney, you're in the business of mitigating risks and managing risk to firms and clients, right? And that's why GRC might seem appealing to non-technical people because you can fully execute that role without being technical. And I think that's why people pivot in via that path. Again, I I would say if you can help it, it always serves you well to understand how it fits together, man. Sitting with a risk assessment and asking theoretical questions, like for example, you implement MFA. Now you're asking a question: does the system support MFA? Yes, it does. But you don't understand the complexities of, MFA with SMS versus app versus another channel. You don't understand which one is better. Somebody says, no, it has MFA, and off you go. So I think a deep understanding will certainly help you do a much better job in GRC. The problem with coming into a space and not understanding how it fits together on the technical layer is it almost becomes a tick box exercise, and the value becomes very limited, right? And again, I've seen some of the best GRC people come from like proper technical backgrounds, right? There's a guy called TK. I worked with him. He used to be a firewall engineer, so like physically configuring firewalls, and then he went into GRC, right? And he understood it. If he said, there's a risk where TLS is not configured properly, he understood on the technical layer what it meant and how to fix it. And I think that's the power of understanding the detail. All right. Again, I say this, you can make it work. If you put in, people are different. So if you come into GRC, you can absolutely make it work. It will take a bit more from you. And it also depends on the environment. If you have an environment that's not tolerating of somebody raising a risk that's not a risk. I've been in companies where, let's say, the auditor will say there's an issue, and you get people, and it turns out to be a false positive, right? People will blow it completely out of proportion. The relationship between IT and audit is a lot of times a lot of friction. So it depends on the culture of the org as well. What tolerance is there to support you. Like normally where I work, companies, it's quite a pleasant culture, which means you're an auditor, you're new in the field, people will work with you, and then they will accommodate you. But again, it comes down to company culture. Um, Mo- Mojalefa.
Yes, Mr. Grant. Actually, my question is divided into two. Actually goes like this: which certificates provide the best return on investment in terms of like money and time? And then also, how would you structure or your recommendations on a well-structured certification roadmap without burning out? Because I found myself like I started when I think it was last year around February, so I found myself going between full end, but what is this? A front end, back end, full stack, DevSoc, and then SOC until I found Hacking Hub. I'm a member of Hacking Hub, so and yeah, I'm an IT technician, technical support at a wholesaler. So I wanted to have a clear layout as to like which certification should I look into in terms of time, in terms of money, because like time is very limited. So in terms of like investment. Thank
No,
you.
100%. Have you done Security Plus?
I'm writing my Security Plus in 27th of March. But now
100%.
actually I'm scheduled to write my CC on the 28th of January.
Yeah, so look, if you haven't done CC and Security Plus, as I mentioned earlier, that would be the starting point, right? So CC is really the fundamental, let's call it the lowest level of certification out there. Not the lowest level in there's no value. It's in terms of the effort required to obtain it, right? It doesn't cover extensive body of knowledge. Security Plus is going to be a good one to start with. I think it's a good one. And then from there, it would depend on where you want to go, right? If you are leaning towards, technical ethical hacking roles, you'd need to look in some technical certifications along that path. But from a base perspective, Security Plus, you are part of the hacking hub. So what I'll do is I'll speak to Sia, and I'll come there, and we can have a deep dive on that forum. Okay, Clive.
100%, thank you, sir.
I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I have a set of questions. I don't know if there's a limit, but I have three questions. Can I ask?
Now you can shoot.
Okay, so I've been seeing people going to non-traditional universities. Like, I don't know if you've heard of West Governors University, where people get a BSc that's self-paced and you can finish it within a year. I wanted to know if does that have the same value as a BSc from WITS, for example, when you're looking for a job, or should I go to a university since I'm attending at TUT right now? So I don't know whether to make the transition.
No, 100%. Yeah, so Clive, yeah, I'll give you a disclaimer, right? From my perspective, like I don't know West Governance University. I don't know how rigorous it is. So if I'm looking at two people where all things are equal, I'll probably attach more value to something that I know, right?
Mm.
So that is just me. I think you need to ask this question for some more people in the industry. But I also see a lot of people are posting things from places I have no idea where they are, how good it is. I can only go by what I know. So on my side, I'd be leaning towards the more known institutions.
Oh, okay. And my second question is, how do you choose a good mentor? How do you know someone is a good mentor?
Yeah, on mentorship. So they're a good mentor. Yeah, tell me, when you say mentor, are you talking formalized mentoring, like checking in once every 2 weeks, having a program in place, and those things?
Yes, sir. Or somebody as a
Yeah.
guide into the industry, because we're new, we need somebody to, guide us. Some
Yeah.
people might lead us into bad paths. You just don't know who's good and who's bad.
No, 100%. Look, my view on this is I normally say what you should aspire to do is identify a few people. This is my take on mentorship, right? The
Mm,
reality is the people that you will classify as good won't have the time to mentor you, all right? Because a lot of people would want them to be their mentor, and it's just one of those things where the time is just not there. I can tell you from my perspective, uh, people every now and then will ask me, can I mentor them? And I can't do it. I don't have the time to sit with somebody for 30 minutes in a week, check in,
mm,
because it's not just one person, it could be five people, and the time is not there, right? That's why I personally, my contribution to the industry is these sessions where I will be on a call with 40 people, and I will share insights, and hopefully this is a form of mentoring, right? So what I would encourage you to do is identify a few people that you look up to, people that you believe is progressing the way you'd like to progress, right? So they're studying the things you're thinking of studying, they're doing the job roles you wish to apply for. So people that you aspire to kind of be like, or that you admire, right? And then if
mm.
you have specific questions, you then approach them. All right. So if you want to know, I'm thinking of studying ABC, what are your thoughts? You can come to me with one specific question. We have a 10-minute chat. I give you an answer and you walk away, right? And
Mm.
I would agree to that any day. But if you come to me and you say, be my formal mentor, we meet once a week, I'm gonna say, no, I can't do that. So I will encourage you to identify a few people. And then I will also encourage you is most of the people you identify probably will have some kind of online presence, meaning there'll be some videos, some webinars, some articles, right?
Yeah.
It's a good place to start as there, right? Because like if I were to mentor you, I can guarantee you all the questions you asked me in the first 30 minutes I already covered in online masterclasses available on YouTube. So what I'm saying is chances are that the people that you're gonna want to mentor you already have a lot of content out there, whether it's a book, whether it's a video, whether it's an article. Chances are you can get all their mentorship knowledge without really engaging them, if it makes sense.
Oh, okay. So I get that the fact that you can get knowledge from, external places instead of like hitting them up. And that kinda, taught me something. Can I answer the last question? I mean,
100%.
ask, when do you know it's the right time to create your own community?
Yeah, look, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'll tell you why I started the chapter. All right.
Mm-hmm.
When 18 months ago, I was looking to join a community. At that time, I wasn't aware of DevSecOn.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking in Cape Town what to do, and there was nothing. There was nothing that met my requirement. What I wanted was a community of where cyber people come together of all different levels, and I wasn't there, and I started it. That was the only reason I started the chapter, right? If you believe that there's a like, and now maybe I don't know if C is on the call, but he found himself having a lot of people doing triacmes and needing knowledge, and he built that community. So I think it will authentically present itself, man. I think first ask yourself why do you want to do this, right? Is there a need? Maybe you're a bunch of people, you all have an interest in forensics, and there's no
Mm,
place for you guys to get together, right?
mm.
If you're saying to me, we're a bunch of developers and we want to talk about secure coding, I'll say DevSecOn exists already, just become part of that. So is there a need? What's your objectives? And if the need and the people is there, then the time is there.
Okay, so
Right?
you create something that you wish was there in a way.
100%. If you need, if, basically, it comes down to what do you need that the market is not giving you?
Oh,
Where are
okay.
you
So
based? Where are you based?
I'm based in Witbank, Emalahleni.
Okay, Johannesburg, no?
Yeah, it's very close to Johannesburg, like
Yeah, so
100
if you
kilos.
if you believe in Cape Town, we have like we there's enough events where a lot of people come together, on a Saturday or on a weekday. If you
Mm.
don't have that there, then the time is now for you.
Yeah, there's nothing. It's completely dry.
100%. Now, then it's the right time to start it.
Okay, thank you for the advice.
Okay. Let me just go back to the chat and then I will come back to the questions. Okay, so Tracy's asking, how can someone with automation and coding background best transition into cyber, IT intern? Yeah, so look, I think coding and automation is probably going to be an easy slide into cyber because, w- in cybersecurity, the thing that a lot of people are now aspiring to do is to automate and to script and to do those things. So if you have automation and coding experience, you can certainly read logs. I think this would be an easy slide. So you'd more than likely go into a technical space like SOC or even pen testing for that matter. Um, and then also what skills would provide the strongest bridge? Yeah, so I think some practical SOC experience would be a good bridge there. Even some red teaming experience would serve you well. But if you have automation and coding as a background, you wouldn't have any issues coming into the technical realm of cybersecurity. You have cyber professionals now that's lacking those skills. So I think it would be easy this way around. Rihanna, let me just read here. So matriculant, breaking to cyber, no prior experience. Where do they start? Yeah, so probably start by understanding the industry. Again, I said earlier, there's 52 different job roles, right? So what are the interests? Are they deeply analytical? Are they technical? Are they more GRC orientated? Once the earlier you can identify your niche, all right, the better. What I would also say is the path into cyber is not always via cyber, right? So starting in a space like end user computing, desktop support, cloud computing, as it's a very valid place to start. So if you become a cloud security engineer, it's a very valid place to start because a lot of people they actually start off being normal cloud security engineers and they then just evolve into a Azure security practitioner because the security is so intertwined there, right? So in short, you know, spend some time understanding your interests and where it is they want to do and what type of work they want to do and understanding different roles. And then be open-minded enough to understand that even though you want to be in cyber, your first role doesn't have to be a cyber role. It can be a support, help desk role, desktop support, doesn't matter. Um, it's viable and those experiences will serve you well. I also started in support for about 5 6 years, and I wouldn't do it any other way. Um, Bubele. So you're currently a system admin. As trainee, you're thinking of doing AZ 900 and AZ 104. Company will pay, but I don't receive income to get other certs. Okay. Will these help with cyber? Yeah. So again, if you are in a situation where the company will sponsor some Microsoft training, but they won't sponsor something else, right? For me, um, if you are funding your training yourself, right, then you need to be extremely critical on what you're spending your money on. If an organization is paying for the training and they're allowing you, time to do it while they're paying you a stipend or whatever the case is, then I would say take whatever is at your disposal. All right. So if the company is willing to sponsor you for some Microsoft training, then and you don't have anything else that can, keep you busy, absolutely go for that. All right. Um, so absolutely go for that. Also, will these certs help with cybersecurity? Yeah, it will help you. So any Azure certifications absolutely will support you, and then you are also busy with Try projects, so you're on the right path. All right. Um, muddy Media. Let me just quickly see the question. What would you say are the differences when it comes to barriers to entry for different roles? This being context of roles that are more accessible at entry level. Yeah. Look, the barriers to entry is an interesting question. Because we often confuse requirements with barriers, right? Barriers mean um it is, yeah, difficulties to entry. Let me just think about this. Different roles. Yeah, I'd say actually, move away from the barriers conversation, right? Because that can imply a host of different things. Let's talk about requirements. You're talking about security engineer versus security analyst. What are the requirements that organizations are looking for these roles? It differs from company to company. All right. So some companies will use these titles interchangeably. So they will call a security engineer um somebody that just does everything, respond to incidents. And then some companies will call security engineers like network administrators, so they technically configuring, network devices. These terms are quite vague in what it is they mean. All right. um yeah, I don't particularly really understand this question. Madi Metia, do you want to come off mute and maybe just elaborate on what exactly you're asking? I don't know if you're still on the call.
Hi,
Okay.
Nafisa.
Yes. Maybe just explain to me what you're asking.
So
Apologies.
what I think I'm asking is how, for instance, I've heard many times that there aren't really any entry level roles in cyber, and people would be much more better off going for roles as a security analyst because you can learn more about um you can get a broad base of knowledge about the cyberspace and then transition into a more specialized role like a security engineer,
Oh, yes.
so on and so forth. So I was
No,
asking,
100,
how do
100%.
you sort of navigate those things?
No, I understand. Okay, I understand the question. Look, with some roles, you cannot have a tolerance for inexperienced people, right? So let's make the assumption that security engineer means firewall administrator, which is a reasonably accurate assumption, right? If I'm looking for a security engineer to manage my security devices, I probably won't be entertaining people without experience, because if you get it wrong, the organization goes down, right? The firewall rules is wrong, traffic is blocked, is big business impact. So you must also, from that perspective, understand the role is critical, and we need somebody who's going to come in and ensure things are done right. This role specifically, people that administer network devices, is extremely critical roles, right? You cannot have interns messing around there, because you get it wrong, there's business impact immediately. Then you get other roles where the risk tolerance is a bit bigger. All right. So if you think of a SOC level one analyst, you can take somebody with no experience, because when they get stuck with an investigation, they just turn around and ask a level two analyst or level three analyst for help, right? So it all depends on the organization, how many people are there to buffer you. But the short answer is there's absolutely roles where we cannot tolerate people with no experience, purely because the potential for impacting the business is too big. And that's something you can navigate. That is something that you just have to work around, right? And you work around by looking at what roles are easier to go into, where the company is more comfortable. You build up your skill and you work from there. All right.
Thank you.
Subasiso, thank you. CBC, so am I available for checking CVs? No, I'm not available for that. Unfortunately, again, it comes down to time, man. So I just don't have the time to look at CVs, right? So that's not something that I particularly do. Clive, and then I'm gonna go back to the hands. How often do you do these? Um, Clive, I want to do this quarterly. I want to do this quarterly, I call it a quarterly community mentoring, where I just do a one to many. And again, it comes down to time. I absolutely don't have the time for one-on-one sessions with people. And I find this is a way where I can spend 2 hours and 40 people can benefit, and then it works well. So if it goes to plan for me, it will be once a quarter. Okay. There's four more hands, so I'm gonna take these last four questions and then we'll call it a night. Okay. So we'll do the first one, Tabani.
Good evening, Grant. Thank you very much for taking my hand. Yeah, can you hear me, Grant?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, I've been wanting to join the ISC2 chapter for quite some time, and it's very unfortunate that I'm in Gauteng. Because I always look at your website and there are so many resources, and I envy you guys at that site. I wish I was there.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes. Okay. And then the question that I have, Grant, is I've been wanting to break into the cybersecurity industry for quite some time, but I'm one of those who has not been lucky. However, now I've decided now to pursue my master's with VETS in cybersecurity management. So now the question that I have is it worth it pursuing the master's in cybersecurity if one does not have experience? Do you think there could be opportunities thereafter? Thank you, Grant.
No, 100%. So I'll maybe share from my side. I also did a master's in cybersecurity, with the focus in cybersecurity long before I had any cyber experience, right? And sometimes we have to play the long game, because when I graduated, it didn't serve me at all for the first few years, because I just had a piece of paper, but no experience and no certifications. But now, 10 years later, I've got the master's certifications and experience, and it serves me now, like 8 to 10 years down the line, a lot more, right? So if you are fortunate right now to have the time and the resources to do the masters, absolutely go for it, right? What I would encourage you to do is, in parallel, build your network, connect with people, share your story. When you meet people, tell them I'm busy with my masters, and then when you get it, you have other things going for you as well. If you have some downtime in that process, consider doing a certification. But absolutely go for it if you are able to and you're busy with it now. All right. Again, be mindful that when you graduate, you're not going to wake up tomorrow with a whole lot of job opportunities waiting for you. All right. But at some point down the line, it's going to serve you well.
Okay.
Okay.
No, thank you very much for that. And then my last question is, can someone from Gauteng join your chapter in Cape Town?
Yeah, you can. So actually, you can message me privately, because we wouldn't charge you fees. You're not going to benefit from our events, because you're not here. All right. So you can. All of our online resources is completely open to anyone. When you pay for membership, you're really paying to attend 4 in-person events, and if you're not here, it doesn't make sense to pay fees for something you can't enjoy. You understand? Everything online is open and free for anyone.
Okay. So but then you say I can join, but
Yeah,
that will be
hundred
for
percent.
free.
No, you can 100%. You can. Um, it's open to anyone. I just if I tell you sign up and become a member, and knowing you're not in here, you're not gonna be part of anything in person. There's no value for you. You understand? We do online things, we do webinars, we do a lot. That's all free. If you're gonna come to Cape Town and be part of the in-person activities, then absolutely become a member. Okay, but it's open to anyone.
Okay. So then can I join then through the web, or I must send an email, or what must I do?
Now
Because
you
I'm
you
of the
can
view.
just drop me a message on LinkedIn, and I will tell you how to go about it. Okay.
Okay, no, thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yes.
Giovanni, thank you.
Hi, Grant. Hope all is good and well.
Oh,
Thank you
well.
very much for a very insightful and informative presentation. It's been a while, me myself being an educator and a training facilitator, somebody that's keeping me busy and occupied for a straight hour. I appreciate it. What I just want to ask from your side, your opinion, I'm not sure if you're familiar now with the QCTO programs that's being rolled out. I think they brought out now the cyber analyst qualification. It's an NQF level 5 qualification. And I'm actually glad that, especially government, because now it's NSFAS funded, is looking into these type of programs. Besides that, they have now IoT, computer, tech, cloud, etc. The only concern that I might have, yes, the program is there. It covers theoretical, practical, and work-based experience. It's just the fact that now you have the qualification, what happens afterwards, the continuous support. And based on what you said, you should have the qualification and the certification. Me, myself, I teach CompTIA, but the A plus and N plus. Now, the problem is, yes, you get the theoretical experience, but at the end of the day, especially with cybersecurity, you need that practical hands-on experience. And I've noticed that, I think it was 2 years ago, or was a year ago, that ISC, the CC came out. And I started training some of my ex-students on it. But the problem was that afterwards they asked me, what now? And you actually gave me some insight, what is the next step? And I've noticed, sorry, I'm all over the place here,
No, it's
that
fine.
that the cybersecurity roles that come out, or that is coming out, what you actually posted there, it shows the experience. You need 3 or 5 years experience. That can be deter anyone. I've completed A plus, I've completed security plus or CC. What now next? So that is what I'm also trying to navigate with ex or current students. You have now the certifications or the qualifications, but when you see a job advert, and I encourage them to apply, because end of the day you've got nothing to lose. Because like you said, there will be somebody that will give you a chance or opportunity.
Yeah.
What would your advice be for ex-students, especially mine, that has done CompTIA security, who has done CC, the next step, because they are applying, but each and every time it's like, ah, you don't have the experience. What next?
No, 100%. I think, Giovanni, i- i- when we encourage people to shoot your shot, and apply for things regardless, there's two sides to it, right? Sometimes it works, and sometimes people are applying for things where they obviously don't meet the criteria, and then it becomes despondent, right? So if you see they wanting 5 years experience, a degree, and a CISP, and all you have is a security plus, you're setting yourself up for failure there, right? So if people are continuously not getting any luck, then maybe they are targeting the wrong roles. So yes, 100%. There's a lot of roles that require experience, certifications, and degrees. And then there's equally many internships and learnerships and opportunities where you can actually navigate and slide in without any prior experience, right? So I think if you have learners that's asking what next, it depends again on where they are. They've got no prior work experience, then what they should be looking
Mhm,
at is internships and
mhm,
learnerships, right? I'll share with you the Mido Academy is accredited now to teach this NQF level 5 security analyst course you referred to. And
mhm,
again, they take students through a 10-month program. They'll teach them that, they'll do some security plus, and then ultimately they'll try and place them at the organization. And
mhm,
that's where they get the experience. But I would try my best not to encourage people to apply for roles where they outright don't meet the criteria.
mhm,
Now, there's a caveat, right? Sometimes you get lucky and you get it. In
mhm.
my story, I applied for a role that was looking for CISP 5 years. I had none of that and I got that role, right? But if you do it a lot and it doesn't happen, it becomes despondent. You start doubting yourself. So you must just do it with caution, I would say.
No, I agree with you definitely. Me myself, sometimes when I apply in my part-time or private capacity for something online, if they if the job requirement is over and above, I punch above my weight. You've got nothing to lose and so much to gain at the end of the day. And I'm also, just to add on, I'm considering, going to ask them to join the ISU 2 chapter, the CC chapter in Cape Town. Okay. Definitely, if you need students or to join or just encourage, I'm more than welcome to send them your way. Me myself as well, because I'm trying now. I'm more in Comta A plus and N plus. I have my Security Plus and CC. Did a bit of Cisco, and actually, when you mentioned at the end there, I think you mentioned jack of all trades, but somewhere you have to specialize. It's a
100%.
it's a good thing at the end of the day, but end of the day, like, oh, you're all over the place. What are you really actually want to do? Um,
100%.
you actually make me consider going back to the private sector, but that's a story for another time.
No, thanks for sharing,
Okay.
Giovanni. Thank you. All right, we've got two more hands, then we will call it a night. Simon.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. So I'm in the car. I hope I'm audible.
You
calling in
are.
from Europe. Yeah, great. Thanks for that. So thanks for your insights. It was lovely to listen to your advices. I have a question more leaning towards the difference between IT and OT, namely operation technology, where you have a lot of processes, where you have real-time requirements, etc., which I'm currently working in, and where's a difference in terms of goals on cybersecurity, where you have availability as the main priority because you want to produce, you want to keep a process running, etc. So my question is more about, well, I mean, I'm in that field, and I'm looking now also to Cape Town specifically to assess the market and the job opportunity for myself. And I was interested to learn or to get your insight on that field. Is that a where you guys make a difference? Is it is there a special role for that kind of OT environment, how we call it? And what would be the name for that? So happy to hear
Yeah.
your thoughts.
Look, you see the name for that could vary, but now there's an absolute need and appetite in Cape Town for that. I previously worked for Engine, right? We had two OT cybersecurity specialists in the team. A lot of companies valuing OT experience. Obviously, if you think of technologies like Nozomi, Forescout, I think there's a big demand for that. If you think of cybersecurity where there's a skill shortage, right? I always say in the OT space, it's the shortage within the shortage. So absolutely. Again, from a training perspective, I think the most recognized training in that space is obviously SANS. Again, very expensive. EC Council has got some SCADA courses as well. But yes, in Cape Town, there's a big market for it, and there's a massive shortage for it.
Okay. May
Okay.
I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Well, I was just so I'm currently holding an IEC 62443 certification as a security expert, which is now our Bible when it comes to cybersecurity and OT. And I'm working for a big automation company, controllers, HMIs, SCADA as well. So what's a path that you would look into if you say it's a shortage within a shortage? Are there specific companies, specific industries? Any guidance on that?
Yeah, look, so obviously there's technologies, right? So again, there's the vendor agnostic side of things, and there's a vendor specific side of things. So you're looking at vendor agnostic, you're absolutely looking at SANS, and you might be looking at EC Council for what they've got, right? But now you've got OT vendors, your typical ones, Honeywell, Siemens, Motorola, and a host of others. So again, you also need to be clear on where you play, or are you playing specifically on the OT cybersecurity technology space? So I think there's a bit to unpack there. Are you currently working in OT?
Yes, well, I work for Siemens specifically,
Okay.
and I'm looking at the controller security, HMI security.
No,
of those
100%. So
products.
it probably would make sense for you to specialize, because Siemens is quite big here by us, right? So it probably would make a lot of sense to go down a path of, becoming a Siemens security expert. And that would differentiate you immediately, because I can tell you a lot of OT people probably never worked for Siemens before. OT cybersecurity people. So
Okay.
so from a technology perspective, you could be looking into what courses Siemens has available, like a certified Siemens OT practitioner, and then you just complement it with some vendor agnostic OT training. All right. So then you
Uh,
kind of have the principles from a generic perspective, but you also have the technology specific stuff. And like I said, Siemens, Honeywell, those are big names. So any auto operation would be running some of those equipment.
okay. Great, Grant.
Okay.
Thanks a lot for your insights.
Now you're welcome. In terms of industries, I would say almost any industry, oil and gas comes to mind immediately. But again,
Mm,
energy, renewable energies, ESCOM, everywhere you will find a big need. I know ESCOM has got a big OT cyber team as well. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity in South Africa.
okay. Good to know.
Okay.
Thanks.
Last question, that is from Luamkelo.
Hi, Grant. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So, Grant, I hope you don't mind, right? Let's look back at your time at TFG, right? How did you position yourself internally so that you were seen as suitable for the information security role, as opposed to being kept in support?
Yeah, you see that if I reflect on that time,
Mhm.
so at the time it was Ronaldo Jack was the manager, right? Now at the time I didn't know him at all. And all I did was I just sent him a note to say, can I sit down and have lunch with you? And it was as simple as that. I sat down with him and I said to him, I see you've got a role. I don't meet the requirements, but what I would like to know from you is what can I do in the role I'm in over the next 12 months? So if you have the same role again in 12 months, I at least stand a chance. That was the basis of the conversation, right? So it was me shooting my shot. He came back to me 2 days later. He said, apply for the role. I applied and I got the role. I was in the middle of doing my master's, right? In security. I was in support in the middle of the master's, and that made for a very good conversation in the interview. I'm in the middle of the journey. I've got an interest. It wasn't I saw the role and now I have an interest. It's I saw the role and I've been, on this journey for 10 months. So it kind of supported my case. So that was, my origin story.
Okay. If I may ask another question.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, so you've worked across a few organizations. When you look back, what signals told you it was the right time to move from one organization to another?
Sure. Asking some interesting questions there.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Look, I think from a career growth perspective, right? I'm a firm believer that we are in control of the timeline. So when I was at TFG, the timeline that was, set out for me didn't map the timeline I had for myself. And I left and I went to Engine, right? And if you look at my engine timeline, I was in 3 roles in 3 years there, like every year in a different role, right? And then I left again, and this is well not public yet, but I'm starting at a new place in Feb next month, right? So I'm starting a new role as Group CISO at a different organization. I I'm a firm believer that we set the timeline, man, and when we map out where we want to be, when we want to be there, when you get the signal that it cannot happen where you are, you just know it's time. All right. So that's the one part. The other part is cultural compatibility. So if a place doesn't align to your personal values and culture, you will immediately know it's not for you, right? That's another signal. So the cultural compatibility, is an obvious one. You'll feel it immediately, and the other one is your professional timelines and your objectives. You cannot be staying where somebody says it will take you 3 years to get there, and you're good to go now. So that's my story. I control the timeline, and if it cannot happen where I am, then I will make it happen wherever I can.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. On that note, I'm gonna say thank you. Probably we did miss a person or two's questions, but I do apologize. We'll call it a night here. I'm gonna put this on YouTube, and then I'll send the mail out tomorrow to everybody who registered just to say thanks for attending with the YouTube link, and I'll attach a PDF copy of the slides as well. Have a good evening and thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.